Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you all very much for coming down here. We would most of all like to thank His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj for being with us tonight. Let's all move forward just a bit to make room for people.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Chakshurumilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juthapadakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatham Sahagana Raghunatham Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Harichana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sukhe Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarudascha Kripa Sindhurya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Krishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Asravya Deshavarine. Hare Krishna. I am sincerely grateful for this very special opportunity to be among all of you this evening. A special gratitude to Tukaram Prabhu and Radhika Devi for inviting me here to be in your association. Today is May 1st. Yes? It is also entitled May Day. Is it still like that? I would like to share with you what I'm remembering. In 1976, my beloved Guru, spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, was in Hyderabad. Actually, it was December 10th, 1976. And it was the appearance day for the Vyas Puja of his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. Prabhupada read from a poem that he wrote, a beautiful poem in glorification, love, and honor of his spiritual master. And that poem was so deep, so beautiful, and expressed such profound gratitude that when his Guru Maharaj received it, he wasn't there for the Vyas Puja, but he received the written offering. He would read it to special guests and share it with his disciples. In fact, he put it in his newspaper magazine called The Harmonist. And from that time, all of Srila Prabhupada's God brothers and God sisters called him poet, Kavi. Now that, from 1936, it was lost. Nobody had access to it over the years. And in 1976, someone discovered it and sent it to Srila Prabhupada. And on this day of December 10th, Srila Prabhupada was reading it. And he said, I thought it was lost forever. He said, but one of my students, Prabhupada said, I think it was Guru Das, found it in a museum in London, where they had copies of The Harmonist. And there it was printed. And Srila Prabhupada was so happy to have this poem after so many years. And on this occasion, he was reading it and giving some commentary. It begins, adore ye all, this happy day, blessed than heaven, and sweeter than May. Srila Prabhupada describes why he wrote sweeter than May. How many of you have been in India in May? It's the absolute worst time to be in India. It's the hottest time of the blazing summer. Last time I was in India in May, I got heat stroke. But it's oppressively hot. People are just waiting for the monsoons to come in June to cool things off. But to speak of Bengal, and Srila Prabhupada actually wrote this when he was living in Mumbai, in those days, Bombay. Srila Prabhupada, he met his Guru, he describes this in his talk, he met him in 1922. And in their first meeting, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, the first words he spoke to him was, you are an educated young man. I request you to bring the teachings of Lord Chaitanya to the Western world in the English language. This is the first meeting. They hadn't been introduced yet. Srila Prabhupada describes in this talk in Hyderabad how he was a very, very dedicated follower of Gandhi. And he dedicated his life to nationalism. Prabhupada said he was a staunch nationalist, to the extent that he gave up his university degree and everything he worked so hard for, because that was what Gandhi felt was best, to get independence from the British Empire. And it was at that time that Srila Prabhupada said to his Guru Maharaj that we should first become independent. Otherwise, who's going to listen to the message of India as long as we're subjugated? Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, with all conviction, he spoke words that ring true forever. He said all these political parties and all this nationalism and all these things, they are always coming and going in this material world. There's only one solution to the real problems of life. And there's only one thing that's sustainable. That we're all eternal spirit souls. We're all eternal servants of God or Krishna. Unless we realize that any solution just postpones the problems for another day. He spoke with such faith. Srila Prabhupada said, at that moment I accepted him as my eternal father and spiritual master, and dedicated his life to spread the message of Lord Chaitanya in the English language in the Western world. At that time he was 25 years old. He was just married a couple years before, and he had a child that was only 1 year old, a little baby like this one that's crying. And he was just working at this Dr. Kartik Chandra Bose's laboratory. Very nice job. But he held that instruction so much in his heart. He could feel the compassion, the love for all living beings that his Guru had. And he completely assimilated that. And this is actually parampara, or the disciplic succession of gurus. Srila Prabhupada explains in this lecture in Hyderabad that I wasn't initiated until 1933, which is 11 years later. But on that rooftop in 1922, in spirit, I accepted him as my Guru Maharaj. I accepted his service as my life and soul. And Srila Prabhupada said that is the real initiation. And then the next year, his job shifted him to Allahabad, which is today called Prayagraj. And interesting, everybody called Allahabad, Allahabad, because it was from the Mughal times, it was named that. But Srila Prabhupada started a medical pharmacy, and he named it the Prayag Pharmacy. And he lived there for about 12 years. He lived in Prayag. And he didn't meet any of his godbrothers. He didn't see his guru for the next 1928. That means the next 6 years. But he was always thinking about his guru and carrying out his instruction. To bring the message of Lord Chaitanya to the Western world. In those days it seemed quite impossible. But in 1928, some of his godbrothers that he had met in 1928. And they met Srila Prabhupada and he was so happy. And then in 1933, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur came to Prayagraj and gave him initiation. Just after that, for his family needs, he moved to Bombay. And in Bombay, two of his dear godbrothers, I believe it was Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj and Bhakti Sharanga Goswami Maharaj, they came to Mumbai. And along with Srila Prabhupada, they started the first center there, Gaudiya Math. And actually the place they started that was just a few minutes from where Radha Gopinath temple is today. And our Guru Maharaj came there, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, to install the deities. And his godbrothers, these very exalted sannyasis, they told Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada that Abhay, who is now Abhay Charanaravinda Prabhu, he's so expert at preaching and leading kirtans and organizing, he should be the president of this temple. And Srila Prabhupada had a pharmacy there in Bombay and was taking care of his family. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, let him carry on what he's doing at this time. In course of time, he will do everything. In 1936, while he was in Bombay, at that little Gaudiya Math in South Bombay, he composed this Vyas Puja and wrote. Interesting, it was exactly 30 years before he started ISKCON in New York City. (22 to 36), how many years is that? 14 years after he got the instruction. And he was taking care of his family the whole time. And 29 years before he boarded Jaladuta to go to the West, he wrote this Vyas Puja. And he describes, what does it mean, sweeter than May? Adore ye all, the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May. When he appeared in Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. So now it's 1976, exactly 40 years from when he wrote it. And he's seeing it for the first time again. And he's saying, he's asking, why did I say sweeter than May? If you tell somebody in India, this is such a happy day, it's sweeter than May, people in India will say, every day's sweeter than May. It's the hottest, worst day. It's interesting how in America, the nicest time of the year is when summer vacation is. Yes. Especially in the northern states, June, July, and August is where school breaks are. But in India, it's at the worst time that the school breaks are. April and May. So it seems like there's a difference between the value of tapasya and enjoying. But Srila Prabhupada described that he wrote sweeter than May because he had heard that May was the nicest time of the year in the West. He had never been there, he just heard about it. And he said to his disciples, what is it called? Mayday? And the devotees said, yes, Mayday. Prabhupada said, Mayday, it's May 1st. He said, it's the nicest, most pleasant time of the year, so I was describing my guru taking birth in that way, comparing it. But it's interesting because he wrote his Vyas Puja into his guru with this in mind, of going to the West. The day that's most pleasant in the West. This was how he was glorifying his Guru Maharaj. What was in his heart? And Srila Prabhupada, he was considering, even at that time, 30 years before he came, how to present Krishna consciousness in a way that was relevant to those who his Guru instructed him to reach. When Srila Prabhupada in 1965 was on Jalatutta, he wrote that beautiful prayer to Krishna. A prayer that, even that, he never expected anyone to read it or for it to be published. He just wrote it to Krishna. He was all alone on a boat, a cargo ship, in the Boston Harbor. About 36 days overseas. He had several heart attacks, seasickness. Didn't know what was going to happen when he landed. And he wrote this beautiful prayer, Krishna. Please give me the words, give me your words to speak, and give them the power to understand your words so they could be happy. Can you imagine? He had lived in Vrindavan for so many years, and he really didn't know if anyone was even going to be there to meet him. No money. 69 years old, and he's looking at the skyline of Boston, which is nothing like that in India. It just looks so materialistic and insurmountable materially. Srila Prabhupada was praying to Krishna for the words that could be relevant to reach these people's hearts. That exchange in 1922 was like a seed being planted in Srila Prabhupada's heart. It was just about to sprout when he arrived here in the United States of America. And now I see how it has created so many beautiful flowers all over the world, not only in the forms of temples, but literally millions of devotees. Srila Prabhupada was describing that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings is the pathway of purifying the heart. Cheto Dharmana Marchanam Balamahadavagni Nirvana. This chanting of the holy names of the Lord, this practice of devotional service to Krishna purifies the heart, purifies it of selfish lust, arrogance, envy, greed, illusion, anger. When the heart is pure, then we can actually see things as it is. Otherwise, however many skills, however much we have materially succeeded or advanced or are respected, everything we see is not as it is. Prabhupada very expertly translated the word Maya as that which is not. That means when we are in Maya, when we are disconnected from the eternal nature of the soul, loving service to Krishna, then everything we experience in life is not what it is. So how could we make sustainable solutions to problems when we don't really know what the problem is, and therefore we really don't know what the solution is? Little Prahlad, when he was 5 years old, he told his friends, he told his teachers, he told his father that whatever solutions we make without understanding this spiritual truth, the solution to a problem will create a more complex and difficult problem than the original problem. So in this world today, there's so many divisions, so many opinions. People are fighting on ideologies, political, nationalistic, on the basis of race and basis of philosophy. So much fighting, so much argumentation, so much division. But unless we know the nature of the soul and the nature of God, we're seeing through the lens of Maya. And this is the very beginning of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's beautiful prayers in Shikshastakam. Cheto Dharmana Marchanam. Unless we cleanse the mind and cleanse the heart, unless we actually come into the light of truth, all of our opinions, all of our convictions, all of our activism and everything else, it's under the veil of Maya, or illusion. And this brings us back to the rooftop in 1922. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, Krishna consciousness, God consciousness is the only actual solution. Kamalatala Jala Jivana Talamama. Everything in this world, our body, our peace of mind, our status in society, our wealth, property, our loved ones, it's all a drop of water, like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. It's experimented with drops of water on lotus leaves. You have to really struggle to keep it on it because it's slipping. And if the slightest inattention, it slips off. This is the way everything in this world is. Just a couple of days ago, I was speaking to a family in Burma where an earthquake came and family members were killed. And right after that call, another person from India, they're all in their 30s, just had a viral infection and became pneumonia and was on his deathbed. And they're all saying, we can't believe our whole life has completely changed within one unexpected moment. And actually, whoever we are, wherever we are, whatever we know and whatever we could do, that's what life is in this world. So what really makes life precious? What is the true value? We can be afraid of losing things. We can blame people for what we've lost. We can blame destiny. But it all is inevitable for everyone in due course of time. Dukalaya Mashashvatam. The soul is eternal. The soul is eternally and naturally experiencing Krishna's love and loving Krishna. When the heart is clean, the soul sees every living being as a child of Krishna, and all of creation is Krishna's sacred property. But when we're disconnected, and nothing could change that. I'm just remembering, I've told the story many times. I was in London with one of my god sisters, and she was dying of cancer. She was an activist, always standing up for the rights of everyone, especially those who were being marginalized in the Hare Krishna movement and everywhere else. She had many children, and she was dynamic. And now she's laying paralyzed and about to die. And her husband has to spoon feed her a little teaspoon at a time of food because she can't move. And she said to her husband, I used to be so dynamic and so active. Now look at me. I can't do anything. I can't even eat. I need my husband to change my diapers or whatever it is for her. She said, what is my value? What is my value in this condition? And then she smiled, and her eyes glistened with joy. She said, I have unlimited value because I'm part of Krishna. I'm an eternal soul, part of Krishna. And because I'm part of Krishna, I have unlimited value, unlimited significance forever. And nothing that can take that away from me, not even death. And then she became even more blissful. She said, but I cannot be proud. I cannot think that I'm better than anyone else, because everyone is a child of Krishna. Everyone has unlimited value. Everyone has unlimited significance. Anything connected to Krishna has infinite glory, because Krishna has infinite glory. But in forgetfulness of that, then we come under the influence of Maya and we become so endlessly vulnerable to the inevitable changes and the limited joys and sufferings of this material body. And when she spoke this, she passed away just a couple days later. How is it that Srila Prabhupada wanted us to understand who we are, what we really have, and how we can help the world? And because Srila Prabhupada had such profound faith and realization and direct experience of the nature of Krishna's love and the power of bhakti to connect to Krishna's love, he was willing to cross oceans and continents. He describes when he came off the Jaladuta, he had 40 rupees, which were not changeable. There was no exchange for rupees in America in 1965. And when he was coming down the ramp of Jaladuta, he was looking right and left. He didn't really know where to go. He didn't know if anyone would be there. But he felt completely confident and happy because he had complete faith in the holy names of God to purify our hearts. And he had complete faith in the mercy of his Guru. And he had a total commitment to help each and every one of us, in his own words, to be happy. By purifying our hearts. So this wonderful kirtan that all of you have been chanting, Prabhu is introducing me to so many people outside, wonderful people and devotees. But the majority of my consciousness was actually hearing your kirtans. So much enthusiasm, so dynamic, and actually so skillful. This is the beauty of bhakti. We truly try to do everything we do the best we possibly can do it. Because it's an offering of love to Krishna. I met several mothers who just had babies. And a mother who has a good mother, a loving mother who has baby, is trying to give the absolute best to that little baby at every moment. Nothing she does is a formality. Nothing is just a duty. Like in a word. Do they still have punch cards when you have to go to work? Now everything's computerized, I don't know, but it's not yet. You just check in and put your hours in. Because there's love, there's care to do the very best. And that's what bhakti is. To put our heart into something means for Krishna's pleasure, for our Guru's pleasure, for the devotee's pleasure, for the well-being of the whole world. We're trying to do everything qualitatively the best we can. whether it's something very great that's recognized by the world, or something very small that's just recognized by the Lord in our heart, it's equally great. Krishna perceives the quality of our intention to please Him. Just a couple weeks ago was Ram Navami, the appearance day of Lord Ramchandra. Do you know the story of Shabari? When Lord Ram was looking for Sita after she had been kidnapped. He met this monstrous tyrant named Kabandhu. And he tried to kill Ram and Lakshman. But Ram and Lakshman defeated him. And when he was about to die, Kabandhu explained that you're looking for Sita, you go to Pampasarovar, a beautiful lake. And there is a great general of Vanara, from the Monkey army named Sugriva. His wife was also kidnapped. So if you make allies with him, you'll both really understand you have a common mission. So Ram went to Pampasarovar. Have any of you ever been there? It's in a place called Hampi. In the scriptures, it's called Kishkinda Kshetra. And there, I've been there several times. It's actually a beautiful place. I like to tell the story. One time we were giving a lecture on the banks of Pampasarovar about the history of the place. And the people told us, the local people, you should end before dark because this Pampasarovar is filled with crocodiles. So don't go in that lake after dark. But those who know about my lack of punctuality, I was just so enthusiastic to speak, it went till the middle of the night. And everyone was so excited about the sacredness and the holiness of Pampasarovar. And I said, does everyone want to bathe in it? And everyone said, yes, Jai. And the local people were saying, no, there's crocodiles, they'll eat you. And I said, does anyone want to bathe? And they said, yes. And we did. And it wasn't just a holy bath. It was one of the most purifying baths I think we ever had. Because we weren't just bathing as a formality. We were actually risking our lives, praying to God to save us from the crocodiles. Or at least to remember God if a crocodile eats us. And we're all chanting Gayatri Mantra. And the crocodiles didn't eat anyone, so. And then we went into the caves. But it was there at that very place that Lord Ram met this very old tribal lady named Shabari. She was just wearing tree bark. She had matted hair. She was from the tribal forest. She had no education. She was extremely old. And she was there waiting year after year. She was just waiting for Lord Ram. And Ram asked, who are you? And she told the story. My guru is Matanga Rishi. And just on this hill close by, he had his ashram. And so many saintly people were living there. And they were your devotees, Lord Ram. And at a certain time, Matanga Rishi and all of his disciples, they performed special pujas, their whole life of love and devotion. They all went back to the spiritual world. But Matanga Rishi told Shabari that you're not ready. You should stay here. We're all leaving without you. You should stay here on the banks of Pampas Rovar because someday Lord Ramchandra is going to come here. And you should be here to welcome him and to serve him. So she's emaciated, thin. She's living in the jungle. She's all alone, day and night. Her whole consciousness is immersed in, when will my beloved Lord Rama come? Years went by, but she had complete faith that Ram will come. It's a hard life. She lived in a cave. And when our devotees went into this cave, it's a deep cave, you have to crawl to get in. And people said, don't go in the cave. This is after we bathed. They said there's snakes and scorpions that live in the cave. But after hearing the story of Shabari, everyone wanted to go in the cave. So I went. And we didn't get bit by, there's hundreds of us too. It's a big cave. It's really low and you have to go way deep down. It's pitch dark. And these little insects were eating us. Everyone was being eaten alive by these insects. But we didn't know what kind of insects because we couldn't see. It was so dark. But the story was so nice. Everyone just, yes, continue. So this is where Shabari lived. Adoshidata sadhu sango tata janakriya. Sri Rupa Swami describes, by the grace of Krishna, faith awakens in our hearts. And that faith guides us to great devotees of the Lord. And in that association, sadhu sangha, the faith grows into knowledge of God and the truth. And then we come in contact with our gurus and learn Bhajana Kriya, a spiritual practice. And the spiritual practice, it anarkina vritti. It purifies our mind and purifies our heart. Tapo divyam putraka yena sattva. Tapasya means we accept what's favorable to pleasing Krishna. And we leave aside that which is unfavorable. Hearing about Krishna, chanting the holy names of the Lord, seeing the beautiful form of the Lord and rendering service, being in the association of those who are striving to love the Lord. These are the primary processes by which our heart becomes pure. And as our hearts become pure, Nishta, we develop deep faith. So Shabari had deep faith that Ram will come. And And if you go to Pampa Sarovar, it's in the middle of nowhere. Why would Ram come there? But Ram came. Because Krishna, Ramchandra, is within the heart of every living being. Actually, every soul has a personal relationship with Krishna. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hrideshya janatishti. That's why Krishna is the Paramatma. He's not just an all-pervading force of peace and love. He is that, but he's also on a totally personal level, sitting next to every soul as our ever well-wishing friend, just waiting for us to turn to him. Swami explained all of this, and according to the oral history, Swami wanted to offer Ram the best thing she could. So she just got some grass and made a mat out of, she didn't even make a mat, she just put some grass on the ground, on the river, on the lake bank, and offered that as a seat. And then she collected some berries. And the nature of these little berries is whether they're ripe or not ripe, they look exactly the same. If they're not ripe, they're bitter. And if they're ripe, they're sweet. Now, she obviously was not trained in high standards of deity worship. She was a simple, uneducated, tribal lady, but she wanted to please Ram. So she would bite each little fruit, and if it was sweet, she'd take it out of her mouth and give it to Ram, and he would eat it. And if it was bitter, she would put it on the ground and she would eat it later. Patram pushpam palam toyam. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells, whatever is offered with sincere devotion, I accept it. Krishna accepted her offerings. And after this beautiful transaction of bhakti, Lord Ramchandra told Shabari, now you can go back to the spiritual world. And he personally gave her all blessings and grace. And in the body she had, she transformed and ascended to Vaikuntha. Hanuman, what was the power of his service? To please Ram, he wasn't just giving some little pieces of fruit from his mouth. He was fighting wars, he was lifting mountains, he was jumping over oceans. But yet, Lord Ramchandra, he's seeing that both were doing the best they possibly could. And that is what actually success is. Later on, Vibhishan, the younger brother of Ram, he became the king of all of Sri Lanka. And he offered everything to Ram. His life, his kingdom, his everything. But to Ram, was that more than the little half pieces of fruit coming out of Shabari's mouth? In this way, a devotee is not proud that I'm better than anyone. A devotee is proud that Krishna will accept me for who I am if I'm just sincere and honest and really try my very best to purify my heart and serve with love. And that means whatever we have, as far as our skills, our intelligence, our influence, whatever it may be, like that mother for baby, we try to give the best we can. It's love. We're offering it to God in the medium of God's holy names and God's beloved devotees. So when I was hearing your wonderful kirtan, and we were all hearing your wonderful kirtan, it's offering your skills in such beautiful ways. It's absolutely wonderful. Then sometimes I'm in India and I see just a simple little widow who could hardly even talk, she's singing, and the same effect is there. To Krishna. So while we're young, we offer the best we can. While we're old, we offer the best we can. That is Krishna consciousness. Especially on May Day. A day that is immortalized in our hearts because Srila Prabhupada considered it the best day in the West, even though in 1936 he wrote that. He was born in 1896. So what was his age? 40 years? Every day of his 40 years, May was torturous. But he's adore ye all. A happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May Day. So we are celebrating May Day in this spirit today. Thank you very much.
Ceremony.